Le Corbusier. Now there's a name. Even if you don't think you know it, I guarantee you've seen his influence. He was a brilliant architect, a game-changing writer, and a seriously divisive urban planner whose ideas totally shaped the 20th century, and they still spark huge debates today. But to really get a handle on his legacy, we've got to ask a bigger question. Where did our modern world even come from? Well, a lot of roads lead back to this guy. He had this vision of a world built on order, on efficiency, and on a completely radical new aesthetic. But to understand why he thought that way, we need to go right back to the beginning. All right, so first things first, our story doesn't start with Le Corbusier. Nope, it starts with a guy named Charles-Édouard Jeanneret. He grew up in this little Swiss town that was famous for one thing, making watches. And, that obsession with precision, it stuck with him. It influenced everything he did, especially when he landed in the creative hotbed that was Paris. They say you can judge a person by the company they keep. For an architect, it's about who you learned from. And man, did he have some teachers. First, in Paris, he's with Auguste Perret. This is where he gets obsessed with a game-changing material, reinforced concrete. Then he heads to Germany, and get this, he's working in the same office as Walter Gropius and Mies van der Rohe. Yeah, those guys, the future titans of the Bauhaus. So by 1920, he decides he's done with Charles-Édouard Jeanneret. He completely reinvents himself, takes on the name Le Corbusier, and basically signals to the world, I am the future. So before he ever got around to revolutionizing buildings, he decided to start with art. He and a painter friend, Amadeo Ozanfon, cook up this new movement called Purism. See, they looked at Cubism, which was all the rage, and thought, nah, it's too messy, too emotional. Their thing, Purism, was the total opposite. It was all about clean lines, order, logic, finding beauty in things like machines and factory parts. And this one idea, it becomes the absolute foundation for everything he's about to build. Okay, so this is where it all starts to click. He takes this whole purist idea, this obsession with machine-like perfection, and points it right at the one thing we all understand, the house. And that leads us to his most famous quote, the one everyone knows but maybe gets a little wrong. A house is a machine for living in. Now, hold on, he didn't mean your house should be a cold, soulless factory. What he meant was that a house should be as perfectly designed for its job as a car or an airplane. It should work. It should be efficient, functional, and free you from all the clunky, old-fashioned junk of the past. So how do you do that? Well, he actually wrote a manual for it, his 5 points of a new architecture. And these weren't just suggestions, they were a whole new system. You raise the building up on these concrete stilts, right? Boom, that frees up the ground. And since the walls don't have to hold the building up anymore, you can have open floor plans, huge ribbon windows for tons of light, and hey, why not put a garden on the roof? This wasn't just a new look, it was a complete teardown of what a house was supposed to be. And if you want to see all those ideas in one place, look no further than the Villa Savoye. I mean, this building is the manifesto, brought to life in concrete, glass, and steel. It's this beautiful white box that looks like it's floating. It is his machine for living, made real. It became an instant classic, the proof that all his crazy radical ideas could actually create something beautiful and functional. All right, so after World War II, everything changes. Le Corbusier's thinking just explodes. He goes from designing these perfect little villas for rich people to thinking on the scale of entire cities. He's looking at the ruins of Europe and dreaming of building a completely new world. And with that change in scale came a massive change in style. I mean, gone are the smooth, white, elegant boxes. Now he's into something way more raw, more massive. He starts using this exposed, rough concrete. In French, they call it béton brut. And yeah, that's exactly where the name for this new style comes from, brutalism. The perfect example of this is the Unité habitation in Marseille. This was his big answer to the housing crisis. And this wasn't just another apartment building. Oh no, this was a vertical city, a city in a box. It had shops, a nursery, even a running track on the roof. The apartments themselves were these clever 2-story units that all fit together like a giant puzzle. It became a model for public housing, literally everywhere, though that legacy is complicated. But even that wasn't big enough for him. He didn't just want to design buildings, he wanted to design the city itself. And his most famous or infamous idea was the Plan Voisin for Paris. Get this. His proposal was to literally bulldoze a huge chunk of historic central Paris and replace it with these giant 60-story towers sitting in a park. It was totally radical, never got off the ground, thank goodness, but it tells you everything you need to know about his start-from-scratch mentality. Well, in the 1950s, he finally got his wish. He gets a call from the newly independent nation of India. The job? Design an entire capital city from the ground up. Chandigarh. This was it. He got to lay out the whole thing, the grid, the parks, and of course, the monumental government buildings, all made from his signature raw concrete. This was his vision, his utopia, finally realized on a gigantic scale. But here's the thing about utopias. They often have a shadow. And Le Corbusier's vision, this idea of wiping the slate clean and starting over, well, it came with a dark side. For all his architectural brilliance, his legacy is tangled up in some really serious controversies, and we can't ignore them if we want the full story.
So, what went wrong? Well, critics will tell you that his grand plans for cities looks great in a drawing, but were a disaster for actual human beings. Words like authoritarian and inhuman get thrown around a lot. The famous writer Jane Jacobs basically built her career arguing against his ideas. She said that by separating everything, homes over here, offices over there, and getting rid of messy, vibrant streets, his plans actually killed the soul of the city.
And then there's the politics. This part is pretty tough to swallow. The historical record is clear. He wrote for fascist journals. During World War II, he actively tried to get work from the Vichy regime in France, which was collaborating with the Nazis. And his private letters contain some pretty awful anti-Semitic comments. Look, this isn't just some minor detail. It's a deeply disturbing part of his story that makes it impossible to just celebrate him as a hero. There's also this really bizarre and troubling story about a villa called E1027. It was designed by an incredible Irish architect, Eileen Gray, a true masterpiece of modernism. Le Corbusier was staying there as a guest, and what does he do? He paints these huge, garish murals all over her pristine white walls, without her permission. A lot of people see this as more than just a prank. They see it as an act of artistic vandalism, of him trying to dominate and erase the work of a brilliant female contemporary. So that leaves us in a tricky spot, doesn't it? Who was Le Corbusier? Was he the absolute visionary who invented the look of the modern world? Or was he an authoritarian dreamer whose grand ideas just didn't work for real people and whose personal life was full of darkness? Maybe the answer isn't a simple yes or no. Maybe the real answer is all around us, in the cities and buildings he shaped, a world that we're still trying to figure out today.